You are a lot of things. You're a CEO, you're a storyteller, a surfer, a writer, a lecturer. But how do you describe yourself?
I like to define myself as an entrepreneur. It allows me to remember that I have taken risky choices and that I should bear them.
In that gap year, were you afraid?
All the time. Fear never goes away. Neither does anxiety, right? I was afraid all the time. So I've learned to do a lot of things, no matter what my mind is telling me at that moment.
You talk a lot about mental health, and coming from your background, seems like you had a change, you had a shift.
Last night I woke up at 3:30 and I said, I am so tired. I am constantly anxious. I have a lot of fears in the night. I worry about so many things. The 21st century's main problems are loneliness, endemic anxiety. But the toughest moment of my career were when I felt that I had no choice.
This isn't your usual podcast. In every episode, I sit down with remarkable people and dig into their lives. We talk about their wins, but we don't stop there. We ask the big questions. Why are they succeeding? What drives them when no one's watching? Where does that fire come from? If you ever felt like you're meant for more, these conversations will give you insights and tools you can start using today to make your dreams come true. I'm Alin Ionescu, and this is the Leader's Lifebook. Open it, take notes, and start writing your own chapter. Nick, nice to have you here. It's been a long time since the last podcast that we had, and since the last chat that we have. I always wanted to have another chat with you to understand you a bit more, because I have a profound respect for you, for what you do, and for way of living your life. You are a lot of things. You are a husband since last year. First of all, you are a CEO of your company, Diesel Consulting. You had a career in one of the biggest, or the biggest consulting company,
The most
in
prestigious
the world.
one.
Yes, that's right. You're a storyteller, a surfer, a writer, a lecturer, a lot of things. But how do you describe yourself?
First of all, hi Alan. It's great to be back in one of your podcasts, although I must admit that I am not the same man I used to be when we recorded Starters, right? A lot of things changed
Yeah.
throughout these years. You've changed, I have changed. I would say at the moment that I always define myself as a very bad surfer, right?
You're right. Okay.
No, I like to define myself as an entrepreneur. I used not to hate this definition, but I used to sort of reject this definition because I thought that entrepreneurship was not something I was cut for. But I've learned to embrace it because it means that I have decided to take some risks in my life. I won't necessarily be the richest man on earth. I won't shoot for that. But describe myself as an entrepreneur allows me to remember that I have taken risky choices and that I should bear them, right? I also define myself as a writer, not because I'm a fantastic one, but because I like to write down my thoughts, and that gives me an excuse to talk to strangers, which is one of my favorite hobbies.
Yes. One of the things that I really appreciate about you is the writing part. You write a lot. It's always been like this, or how you developed the skill?
I've always liked to write since my very since a very young age. I've always liked to write. Yes, I would say so. I've always written a lot. When I was young, I used to write a lot at school, and then when I started traveling, I used to write very long emails and hugely long emails and send them to a mailing list. I think they liked it at the beginning, but then everybody hated me for that, right? I was spamming them. And then social media provided me with a repository for my thoughts. And then psychotherapy has taught me that writing is a great way to structure your thoughts and your fears and detach yourself from them, or somehow spin them in a better way than the one that comes to you when you suffer from your thoughts. And that's why now I've embraced it. Actually, I wake up very early in the night, as you know, because I told you, not because you slept
I
next
know.
to me.
4 a.m. in the morning, always.
4 a.m., 3 a.m. And I wake up with a lot of energy, a lot of thoughts, a lot of fears. And then I try to order them, right? And I write. And some of them end up on my LinkedIn, Instagram profile. Some of them end up in my friends or my wife's WhatsApp chats. Some of them I just keep them for myself there, and I decide to delete them.
What's the secret to write in a proper way?
So there are a few of them. The first one is grammar, right?
Okay.
You should respect the words.
Nice.
You should really pay attention about the way you write words. Like you would never go out of your house smelling, I hope. That's how I see it. I would hate to send an email which has some typos. Sometimes I do, but I try to avoid it. So I would say the first secret, a rule for me, is to pay words the respect they deserve, right? And by carefully choosing the words you put down on paper, you somehow structure your thoughts in a better way. You see more clearly. Let me give an example. You could say that the task is simple, or the task is easy, and it means very, very. It means two very, very different things. For example, say do 200 push-ups. It's a simple task, but it's not easy at all, right? And then I've learned that also the way you describe your emotions, the more precise you are, the better you are able to handle them. And the secret is not the word per se, but the process. If you take some time to choose the right words to describe yourself, your mind in a given moment, or your own situation, that process will help you detach yourself from that feeling and help create some distance, right?
Yes.
And as a famous American psychologist said, in that distance between what you're feeling, what you decide to do, there's freedom. And I've learned to sort of create that freedom, or what a French writer called Emmanuel Carrère calls strategic death. That death, the space that you put between what you feel and what you decide to do with it, it's sort of it's your buffer from reality, right? And that has helped me a lot, I would say. So rule number one is pay attention to the words put on paper. In a grammar, from the grammar point of view, and also from a vocabulary point of view, from an etymological point of view. The second tip that I would give people is structure, right? So you, at some point, you read what you've written and you say something is missing and you don't quite know what that is, right? So at that point, you should ask yourself, you should say, okay, which structure am I giving? Right? What is this? It's the hero's journey, and then I need to have 12 steps. Okay, I might skip one or two, but then if it's an hero's journey, I need to have the steps there. My favorite structure is the most simple one, and it's called SCR, Situation, Complication, Resolution, right? You know that. I've busted your balls with that a few times.
Yes, you did.
Right? So, and that's very important. Structure also in a way, of what Barbara Minto defines MECEness, right? So your thoughts need to be ordered in a MECE manner. So MECE stands for mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. That's how you would write a slide, but that's also how you would write a thought or a bucket list of problems. And that helps me a lot, I would say, right, in structuring my thoughts. Third
how
secret.
Do you structure it? Yeah. Tell me more.
You mean how do I structure in a MECE way?
Yeah.
MECE way says that so basically Barbara Minto says that Barbara Minto is a great communication expert, and she says that, but it's also an expert on problem solving and logics. She's written a great book called The Pyramid Principle. And basically she says that the mind can hold a maximum of 7 items. And after 7 items, people stop really understanding or getting what you're saying or remembering what you're saying. Now, if you want to play it safe, you should do 5 or 3. So let's say that you have, that I want to tell Aline, I want to convince Aline to come to Fuerteventura for whatever reasons, right?
Yeah.
And I have a list of 20 things in my mind. Now, if I tell Aline 20 things why he should be coming to Fuerteventura, I'm just going to confuse him. But if I find a MECE way, a mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive way to sort of gather these thoughts, Aline is going to remember all of them. For example, I could say, well, Aline, there are 3 things you would come, why you would want to come to Fuerteventura. There are economic reasons, social reasons, and mating reasons, right?
Yeah.
Economic reasons, because it's cheap and you would find a lot of business opportunities, and it's a great way to exchange opinions about cryptocurrencies and whatever investments. Then there is the social point of view. You're going to meet a lot of smart people and have a lot of fun. And then I said mating, but mating falls into social because finding somebody to mate with, it falls into social. So I'm like, okay, no, it's not economic, social, and mating. It's probably economic, social, and sporty, right?
Yeah.
So I would say it's good for your budget. It's good for the people you're going to meet, and you can walk in the sunset. You can surf. You can do whatever you want, right? And as you see, or for example, now,
Yeah, it's clear.
It's clear. But if I want to make it sexy, maybe I should find 3 words to describe these buckets that starts with the same letter. So I said it's a matter of social, sports, and then we need to find something with an S, right?
Okay.
Which now I don't know, right? So the more you think about these things, and the clearer your thoughts are, and then you start refining them, and then people start remembering them, right? Think about how I think I do an event, and yes, I am advertising it now. I think that the event has been quite successful lately, and most of it comes from its name, right? A, B, C, D, ABCD, Bari Capitale Digitale, Bari is digital capital. You always remember these 3 letters. It's great, right? Or think about a word that I've used to describe myself, southworking. This word, which has been, I'm not the first one that has used this word, but it's a catchy word, it's a sexy word, it's something that people remember. The way we define ourselves is not from a communications standpoint, also from a strategic standpoint, marketing standpoint, really define us, shape the way we are.
Yeah, you play with words. I always,
all the time.
Yeah. You really like to play with, so that's very nice from you.
Hey, quick pause. If you're finding value in this conversation, I have a favor to ask you. Please share this episode with someone who needs it. Even a single share will make an incredible impact. You will help someone and help us grow, reach more leaders, and bring you even better stories to learn from. Thanks for your support. Now let's get back to it.
Back to the effective writing. You spoke about the structure. You spoke about other things. Bring us again to the effective structure.
What else you want to know? There are different structures. Yeah, there are different structures that you could give to your thoughts, and basically depending on the effect that you want your document or this presentation needs to have on the audience. For example, if the audience in front of you, it's probably lacks some attention, you may want to start with a high dopamine hook, right? Imagine going to your friends and they're all having beers, and then you want to talk with them about something quite serious. It's going to be hard to get their attention, right? So you may first want to start getting their attention, or sort of take them out of the screens. And so you may want to start with a sort of sexy beginning and hook. And that could be something like anything just to catch your attention and then to drag them out. I always say that, guess who cheated on who today? Everyone's going to be like, whoa, tell me this, right? And then at least you have their attention and says, no, guys, okay, this guy, but I'm not talking about sexual cheating. I'm thinking about cheating in the sense of a deal which did not go through. And that's why it's very important that we focus on this, right?
Yeah.
At least you have their attention, right? Or you can play this if you want somebody to truly trust you. You should work on your empathy, which is going to induce some oxytocin in the people you speak with. So you can create empathy by trying to guess how they're feeling that moment. So you say, hey, had a long day. Hey, for example, try to catch them. Hey, I see that you're constantly distracted. Do you have something on your mind? Is it a good time? Or you can risk a little bit more and try to open up and say, to be honest, it's not such an easy day for me because of X, Y, Z. I don't know if you've ever been in that situation. Try to create a connection, and that part also. Empathy creates trust. Now, of course, you need to be professional. So not in every setting you can somehow open up completely and spill your thoughts and emotion on whoever. But you should know that works. Or you could try to induce some endorphins and make people laugh, right? There are
with some jokes.
There's a number. Yes, there's a number of things that you can do that kind of have an effect on your audience that we do naturally. Studying storytelling helps you understand how does brain chemistry work and why some things sometimes are the best thing you can do to open a speech or the worst thing you can do to open a speech. You shouldn't let your instinct decide. You should have a structure in mind how this thing is going to go, how your conversation, presentation, or letter or paper is going to play out.
Yeah.
And then make sure that you structure everything there, right? Of course, then you have to be responsive, right? So I always like to quote John Lennon when he says that life is what happens to you when you're busy making other plans. So it's always great to have a structure and then change. Then you should be able to change, right? Mike Tyson used to say, everybody has a plan until I punch them in their mouth, right? So which is what happens to you, right? But it's better always to have a plan and come prepared.
Yes, totally agree. Also, starting from the effect, starting from the audience, from the impact that you want to have. Either you write an email or you have a speech. Is starting from that end and then go upwards. Really helped me. Coming back a little bit on your story, because we talk about your most profound skill of writing, but you started your career in a consulting company, and how you went from Bari, the place where you were born, to being one of the greatest consulting company of the world.
So it's been a long and winding road. I always say that my career can be defined into 3 steps. Steps number 1 was that I wanted to save the world, right? So in step number 1 of my career, which is true, I'm also a megalomaniac, if you know me well.
You're doing it in your little steps.
Yeah. So there's 3 steps, right? So step number 1, and that's a structure, right? That's a structure I always use to introduce myself and see how this drags curiosity towards me. I hope.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I need to change. So step number 1, it's saving the world. So I studied economics because I wanted to follow the money, like they say in a very famous movie. Because I said, if I want to change the world, I need to understand its mechanisms, right? So, and I studied economics, and then I did a few experiences in a non-profit organization in the slums of Mombasa, got malaria. Then I did economic research in Washington, D.C., and an internship at the UN, the United Nations in New York. And then I went to work with the Colombian government. And then I was sort of stuck in this dream of becoming a hero in war-torn zones. But then I realized I wasn't going anywhere really. I was too ambitious. Multilateral organizations were too slow. And then I told myself, if you really want to have an impact, at least in the beginning of your career, you need to work in the private sector. And I was, it's not that I couldn't make ends meet, but I was somehow driven by the desire of making some money for myself and have some clarity, right? Because at least, when you do development aid, you go from one contract to another contract and you're not really sure. So I went from phase number 1 of my life, saving the world, from phase number 2 to phase number 2, which is saving the wallet, right? I thought about my wallet rather than my world. And so I went to Russia to work for a state-owned enterprise called Finmeccanica, now Leonardo, in Moscow, I was actually very attracted by the fact that international relations are not just done in foreign affair ministries, but also by state-owned enterprises. And this was the second largest defense conglomerate, R&D conglomerate in Italy at the time. And Russia was a great arena to be in. Actually, it was way more Western friendly than it's now. And I was the head of business development there. So I went from one thing to another totally different part, and I learned how to network properly. I learned how I started doing business plans. I started to understand that I was there to do international relations and business development. But then soon enough, I started telling myself, wow, this business thing, it's not just a good business card. It's actually cool to think in terms of finance and net present value. And I've always had this thing of working in economic consultancy and a management consultancy too, to get the skills I needed, but I'd been rejected the first time. So then I said, okay, you know what? I've interacted with some consultants. I really want to be one of them. It's to be a good career step for me. And so when I was in Moscow, I went for an MBA. I told myself, okay, you know what? Why don't I study business and then I apply? So went for an MBA at INSEAD. Somehow ended up in Goldman Sachs for a summer, but that's a story for another episode. And then I got into McKinsey, London-based. And I spent 4 years in the wrong side of my 20s working for McKinsey and Company. Actually, it was a great experience. It was an intense one. There's no way I could have done it for my whole life. Basically, when you're in McKinsey, you are surrounded by some of the smartest people you could imagine from very different backgrounds. And you always feel like a hiring mistake. And it's like a club for insecure overachievers, right? So you always feel, wow, am I really in the same team as this guy who won, I don't know, the football tournament of the Western League, or that has fought in Afghanistan, or that has a PhD in molecular biology, and then that's me, right? And your client expectations are to the roof. They work you really hard, and you're only as good as your last project. So there's no resting on the laurels. There's just a lot of constant pressure to perform. And the great thing about McKinsey is that they give you everything you need to perform well. So you have access to great knowledge. You travel very comfortably. They put you in front of very successful people in the right rooms. And you can, seriously, whenever you need help, they give it to you. But you need to perform. But you need to deliver the project. And that's great. It has really pushed my mind and my brain to edges I couldn't possibly think I would reach. But at the same time, it sort of created, at least in my own psyche, a constant voice of, you're not enough, push yourself a bit more, push yourself a bit more. And that's why, plus I was traveling like a madman. In the beginning, I felt like Agent 007. You're for 3 weeks in Riyadh, 3 weeks in Moscow, and then you go back to London, and then you go to New York for some recruiting. And at some point, you cut every social tie you have. At least I was not good enough to keep that, right? Because, of course, I was in my 20s, and the world was my oyster, and I was, but at some point, I started feeling quite tired of that. Plus, one of the people I had the highest opinion of in my life, my former boss, Fraser Thompson, called me up and said, hey, I'm opening an economic consultancy in Singapore, and I know how much you like to do public policy and pure strategy, and I need someone here. Why don't you come? I won't pay you as much as McKinsey would, but you're going to sleep more nights in your bed. And even if to do so, I had to move from London to Singapore, at that point, that's, the best thing that I could ask for. Public policy and strategy, because in McKinsey, at least in the beginning of your career, you kind of do anything. So one day you do strategy, which is something you like a lot. The other day you do cost optimization, where you're like, not sure. Whilst one day you are in Barcelona in a hotel by the sea. Another day you are in Germany's outskirts, right? I remember that my staffer used to have this this saying, which is that I was walking in her office and she was like, Nicolo, remember, this is not a travel agency, right? Because I was always trying to optimize for location. So at some point, my boss called me up and said, why don't you come to Singapore and work with me? And that was at the moment of my life where I really I was a senior manager, and I had at least 2.5 years, at least in the very best case scenario, before making it to partner. And I needed to commit to a sector and commit even more, whilst I just want to pull the plug for a bit. And I said, or find something that was really interesting. And I said, you know what, Fraser, here I am.
Whoa, crazy choice.
Not so crazy, I would say. I mean, I've always had an obsession for emerging markets, Colombia, Russia. I was working in Africa for a summer. So I've always had this thing for traveling a lot. Plus, I've seen more than 70 plus countries.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of being based in Singapore. I had already studied there. I like the idea of working all the time with a boss, because in consulting, you change boss all the time. It was great. So I went to Singapore. I was very happy, and I had, how long did I stay in Singapore? Maybe a couple of years. I forgot how long I stayed. 1.5, 2 years. I don't know. Yeah, something like that. I had a great time. Fraser was a great boss. The company was growing. I was exposed to great clients: Google, Uber, Netflix, Microsoft. Great.
Yeah.
All these clients are public, so I can say them. And I could teach, because whilst I was at McKinsey, I was not allowed to teach, or at least I had no time to teach, or actually I had no time to teach. I don't even know if I was allowed or not. Whilst I told Fraser that I want to teach, because I was in touch with Chinese University of Hong Kong, where a contact of mine had offered me a gig. And so I actually had a great time. I was teaching Hong Kong a few times a year, living in Singapore, traveling the region, and that was fantastic. Then, I had a great boss, I had great colleagues. It was great. Then at some point, work got way too stressful again, again, I started traveling again. We were pushing ourselves again. I was not in the best situation, because it was like, again, traveling hard, putting a lot of pressure on myself. And then somebody very dear to me passed away in Italy. And that was kind of like a defining moment, because I started sort of was kind of detached. I mean, when somebody dies,
It's a wake up
you
call.
are not just a wake up call. It's like you started seeing reality from the external, like everything else is not as important anymore. And being able to detach myself from that, I told myself, Nick, you're not enjoying this kind of work as much as you did before. Plus now you're kind of tired. You were already tired in London, and instead of taking some time off, you went to Singapore. Now maybe you should really take some time off. And if family is so much valuable to you, then why don't you try to make it work, a life closer to your family? And plus, throughout these 15 years I'd been away from my parents and relatives, I started to appreciate the value of such relationships, and also of the Mediterranean life. So I told myself, you know what, and that was great. I said, I'm gonna take a gap year and try not to worry about what I'm gonna do next. And that's the best tip somebody has ever given me, which is, when you take some time off, don't use that time. First is take some time off, right? So the best tip is if you're not sure about what to do, take some time off. And in that time off, don't force yourself to think immediately. Say that you're taking a gap year of 3 months. Don't tell yourself, after these 3 months, I need to have a job. No. Tell yourself, after 3 months or 3 weeks or whatever, I'm going to start thinking about getting a job or what's next. And usually such thoughts come much earlier, but without the pressure. And I've realized that taking a gap year, a gap quarter or whatever, I mean, sometimes people put a lot of excuses. I have bills to pay, I have a lifestyle. In 80% of the cases, that's, well, not 80%, now they're going to shoot me. In some cases, in 2% of the cases, That's bullshit, because you need much less money than you think. Okay, if you have sons, if you have, commitment, fine. But the reality is that we think that our families want, at least in my group of privileged people. Okay, my group. I come from a very privileged background, and we all are. Since we don't have to worry about what to put on our tables next month, we are very privileged. Okay, but in that group of people, reality is that you say, oh, I'm gonna work hard because I want to be able for my kids to afford the best schools. Reality is that your kids probably need a happy parent and a parent who's there. And then you're fooling yourself. You say, oh, when I'm 50, I'm going to be able to dedicate my sons and daughters all the time they want. That's bullshit. Because then the bar gets higher and higher, because the more you're surrounded by the kind of people that said, oh, if you don't put your kids into private school, you're a nobody. Or if you don't teach your kids how to whatever, windsurf. Reality is that a lot of people, including myself in my early years, are scared of unknown futures. And that's why they fool themselves into staying there. So I was brave for once in my life. I'm not a very brave person, but Amelia, this second mom that I had and passed away, at least it's her last, it was her last gift, made me take this leap of faith. Took this leap of faith, kept the teaching gigs in Hong Kong and in Singapore, started writing a book called Flow Generation with an angel called Vera Sproughton. And that was a great way to, the best thing about that book, it's that it gave me an excuse to meet a lot of people that were closer to my idea of success. Because until then, my idea of success was like big entrepreneur or partner at McKinsey or BCG or big banker or whatever. Whilst when my ideas of success shifted, which was like, it was like basically time and space flexibility.
Yeah.
I started meeting a lot of people that were sort of embodying that idea of success. And that was really great because I started redefining my life choice and said, okay, it's not so weird. And then I felt weird about having just one dream and not 3 or 4. And then they gave me so many tips. Plus, they gave me the courage to start selling myself, to put my face. Like what I'm doing now, which is recording a podcast that will probably be on some social media, whatever. It's something that would have scared myself so much. And now it's totally natural. And I think that and I think that no matter what you're going to do in life, having a strong personal brand or some personal brand and the ability to sell yourself is going to help yourself a lot. And today I read a great sentence on Instagram in the account of Virginia Kush, a friend of mine, that said, they asked me if it was more important the journey or the destinations. And my answer is companionship. I started to understand that the people you surround yourself with are more important than either what you do or where you're trying to go. And now I give a lot of attention and care about the people I hang out with.
Yeah. There is always that quote that says the five people around you define yourself, define your future. So very, very famous. And I totally agree with you, because the people around you gonna create the room, gonna create the vibes around yourself. So having the right vibes around yourself gives also you the power and the tranquility to live the life, to go and face the challenges of the life. So I totally agree with what you say.
Which is also why I got married.
Yeah.
Actually, I like so much being close to Ilaria that soon enough I told her, hey, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Don't go. I don't want you to go anywhere. Just wherever you want to go, I want to be next to you. And
one thing that I would like to ask you is that in that gap year, Were you afraid?
All the time, all the time. Fear never goes away. Neither does anxiety, right?
Hmm.
C- Courage from Latin means cor agere, acting with your heart. It doesn't say fearless acting, right? It means
Yeah.
at some point, no matter how afraid you are, you say, I'm going to do it no matter what. I was afraid all the time. I've learned to endure fear and anxiety. And in The Happiness Trap, a book by Russ Harris that you know very well, it basically says that your actions define yourself, not your thoughts. So I've learned to do a lot of things, no matter what my mind is telling me at that moment. And that was my gap year, basically. Right? So was I scared? Yes. But I knew it was the right thing for me. Sometimes we pay too much attention to our thoughts, right?
Yeah.
Especially in that moment. I mean, if you hear my thoughts the day before a project or the week before a long trip, it's always like, it's a mistake, don't do that, stay where you are. Shush that. Don't do that, right? Don't do that, right? Frank Underwood says a great truth in the House of Cards. Says,
Yeah.
never take any resolution. How is it? After sunset and before sunrise, something like that. So when you are in a stressful moment, don't pay attention to your thoughts. Right? Decide what you want to do and do it, no matter what your mind is telling.
And that's nice because it's like seeing you from the outside. It's like you don't have hard moments. You're like you are very driven. You're like very thrived. You smash the walls that you have in front of you, no matter what. So I always thought, where do you find that fire that burns inside you?
No, but that's so untrue, right? Don't believe in social media. Don't believe in my Instagram account. Last night I woke up at 3:30 and I said, I'm
Yeah,
so tired of that. And then I am trying to build a lot of, I would say, resilience, if it wouldn't sound so
yeah,
2019. Meditation and breathing exercises really helped me out. Putting things in perspective, psychotherapy has helped me a lot. I love Sam Altman when he says that the best quality an entrepreneur can have, number one quality, is determination. I would say that I
yeah,
have become quite good into sort of, I am clean, and I don't know if I can say clinically anxious, but I am constantly anxious. I have a lot of fears in the night. I worry about so many things. And then at some point, I decide to ignore this stuff. But I would lie if I thought it's all something I do. I have surrounded myself with great people. First of all, I
exactly.
was born around some of them. Like my dad and my mom have been great supporters of mine. Have they been perfect? No.
Yeah,
But I've been very lucky with them. And plus, I built a small company which is made of great people, right? So there's Mario, there's Laura, and there are a number of other people there that I know I can count on,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Ludo, Fede, Carolina, Alice,
How do
Alessandro,
you
like
find great people?
on social media. It's true, right? Most of them have replied to job ads, uh, or looked for me, and I've looked for them. It's not hard to find great people. The hardest part is to attract them and hold on to them. That's very hard, and that's very hard. And especially in such a liquid world, you know how much emphasis I put on, because you're one of these people, on meeting in person
Yeah,
for a long period of time. For all of you who don't know about this, in summer I started, texting a few people saying, we're meeting in Fuerteventura in December, book your flights, I'm booking mine. And then everyone's like, fuck you, man. It's so far away in time. It's like, no,
yeah,
commit to it. Because if you don't commit to things don't happen. and this thing have a disproportional impact on my happiness and my stability.
That's very, very nice to hear. I'm very proud to be one
You
of
are
them.
part.
Thank you, thank you. Let's talk about your whole career. What's the toughest moment you had to face in your tough career, and yeah, how did you face it?
The toughest moments were all self-inflicted, right? If I look back at my career, some of the toughest moments were self-inflicted, I would say, right? So yes, I put myself under a lot of pressure, or in banks where sometimes I entirely skipped the night's sleep.
Yeah.
But the toughest moment of my career were when I felt that I had no choice, where I had an image about myself that I was betraying. So at some point when I walked into a hotel in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, and I started having a panic attack, and you know, you're this big consultant, and you're walking into one of the most luxurious hotel in the world, and tomorrow you need to lead a team, you need to lead some clients, and you're the expert, you're the grown up there, you're somebody people count on, and
Yeah.
inside yourself something is exploding, and then you need to put a straight face. That was a very tough moment, especially because I didn't have any drug, any medicine fight with, and this probably made it worse. That was very tough. It was very tough. Another very tough moment when I realized that I didn't want to do a PhD in economics. And basically, both my parents are doctors, and I had always told them, look, I'm going to teach economics in a big university. And that was something they could live with. Okay, he's an only child of two doctors. He's not going to be one of us, but somehow he's going to be a man of science and
More or
research.
less, yeah.
And he's going to have a good business card and a respectable career, a well-defined life path. We won't have to worry about it. If he gets a PhD at Harvard or Yale, he's going to be set for life. And then at some point, I was going towards that. And I was like, wow, I'm going somewhere where now I understand I won't like it. And I felt I had no choice. I felt I was walking towards hell. Although it's not, it's, as you can see, I was not in Gaza. I was
Of
not
course.
in a war zone.
Yeah.
I was just, as Seneca would say, we suffer much more in our mind than
in reality.
Than reality. But that was a very tough moment because I was doing everything to go there, and I didn't know how to tell other people and myself, you need another image of myself. And then subconsciously, I realized that what I was missing was not a plan. What I was missing was a story about myself, right?
Yeah.
It's more important to have a story than to have a plan. This is something that it's my own quote. I just made it up, but let's fix that, please.
Yeah.
So having a story is more important than having a plan. And so I started meeting different people, maybe some that did not have a PhD in Ivy League. Maybe they were people that, had spent a couple of years in Afghanistan or Colombia, or that were having an impact on the world, but not necessarily with a big research project. Then I was like, wow, I could be one of them now. And from that moment onwards, I've gone from a role model to a role model. And the more you understand this, and the more you can sort of toy in your mind with different characters you could be. Jung says that you find happiness in a process of identification. And throughout your whole life, you should always find people you want to look like or you want to go towards. You should always find your archetype. The beauty of this conceptual philosophy is that he says that somehow inside ourselves, we have a lot of wisdom, which is like thousand years old. And that somehow, even if we've not experienced things ourselves, we already know somehow how they look like. And the only thing we need to do is like to, Caroline Pearson says, wake up the hero within yourself. And And I would say that this sleepless night with anxiety crisis, tears, and when you're an only child, you're basically a spoiled brat, even at 25 and even at 30. When you're an only child and you're crying, you're always thinking, guys, where are you? I'm crying. Come hug me. And then there's nobody to hug. Like, hey, how come there's nothing to hug? So it's horrible being an only child and leaving your golden life. I'm making fun of myself. It's actually, I need to grow up. I've had my emotional maturity blossom very late in life, which is why I had a very happy childhood and a troubled youth, I would say. So yes, these have been, so I would say, when I decided I was not doing a PhD, I started. The toughest period was when I had just gotten malaria in Africa, came back to Milan, and living in a slum was a very traumatic experience because somehow anything I knew about Africa and developing world was wrong. I had no framework to replace it. I felt useless with all my books and research. And the plan I was going for was something which did not mirror me. And malaria leaves you very weak. So I could barely walk one block to go to uni. It was horrible because there was a lot of competition, because I'm a very competitive person and I basically had won a very, very important scholarship, and I needed some marks and an academic performance there to perform. And then I had put a lot of pressure on myself. It was a disaster. No wonder I ended up having Xanax for breakfast for a few months, then to sort of balance myself. But it's okay. I want psycho drugs are not evil. I needed them.
Yeah.
Thank God I was able to sort of unhook myself from them. That's why it's very important to have a specialist follow you.
You talk you talk a lot about mental health, and coming from your background, seems like you had a change, you had a shift from that career that you were doing for years of your life to now having more focus on your mental health and on your spiritual part. And it's like you detached from that world in a sort of way.
I wish I could say I detach myself from that. I would say that we give a lot of importance to our physical health, or sometimes we don't even do that, because when you're working a hard job, you don't even think about what you're eating or how much you're sleeping or all these things, and we pay no attention to our mental health. And what we're discovering, we'll talk about it, it's spiritual health, right? Mental health is what happens inside your mind. Spiritual health is what connects us with the universe, right? Now we're laughing about spirituality the same way we're laughing about psychology 10 years ago or 5 years ago, right? But then it's happening and it's there. I would say now there are periods that I work as much as I did, if not more, than when I was in London or in Singapore. I just constantly remind myself that I need to take care of my body, my mind, and my spirit. And there's so many people who don't do that, and I see them falling in the same bottomless pit I used to fall into, that it's something I'm so passionate about. And that's why I talk a lot about these things. That's why I pay so much attention to these things. So, and I see there's a lot of stigma associated with it. So, whenever I say, oh, I used to take Xanax, or sometimes I still carry it just in case, I had one of my parents calling me up and said, you shouldn't say these things, are too personal. I'm like, no, just like a girl carries her, I don't even know how to say that, a Tampax, I should carry my Xanax. It's part of nature. She shouldn't be hiding her Tampax, although sometimes she's forced to that, but she shouldn't be ashamed of that. I shouldn't be ashamed of carrying it just the same way. you carry a nose spray, you should be able to carry that. Now, you shouldn't be using it that easily, right? The same way you shouldn't take antibiotics if you have a cold, but there shouldn't be any stigma associated with that. And it's, I mean, the 21st century's main problems are loneliness, endemic anxiety, and just like in the 1800s, one of the key death factor was tuberculosis, which was also driven by poor hygienic conditions in the cities and smog, etc. We have created a world we live in where we're constantly bombarded by some stimuli that hit our mental health. And we shouldn't be afraid of calling them out. And I know that some clients somehow lift their nose up when I talk about these things. I know they could lose business. I know they could lose a seat in the tables that matter. But if they don't want to discuss such topics, then probably are not the right tables for me to sit in. I've come to terms with this.
How do you manage these constant inputs from everywhere?
There is a very famous not very famous, but it's a very, very good Israeli futurologist that says, in today's world where you have so many stimuli, think about yourself as a football player. Adi Yoffe, it's called. Think about yourself as a football player during the Super Bowl. You have people whistling, people crying, the hot dog guy trying to sell its food. You have so many things going on, and yet you have a game to play, and your eyes must be on the ball. So she said, eyes on the ball. And sometimes it's so hard that you need to practice this thing, and that's why sometimes I'm not able to do that. Otherwise, I wouldn't wake up in the middle of the night sometimes. But you should practice concentration, so meditation, and then you should be able, whenever you notice yourself that you're not looking at the ball, you should be able to get your concentration back and make sense of all these inputs that are happening. And to come back to the beginning of our interview, writing is a great way, because you take so many things that have happened to you and you decide, okay, which ones I'm keeping, which ones I'm zooming on, which ones are part of the bigger picture. And writing gives meaning to your life. And the good thing about writing is that you can choose which meaning to give to all the things that are happening to you. That's why it's so important, even if you're not writing, to always ask yourself which story I'm living, which story I want to live, which meaning I want to give to this meeting, this experience. You could say that my whole life could be interpreted as one failure after another. I was not strong enough to stay into McKinsey. I was not idealistic enough to work for the UN. I was not enough or in a different way. And there's going to be people telling you different things and giving you different meanings. At some point, you should choose rationally the meaning you want to give. Even if the voice in your mind, the voice is telling you a totally different story, that is where you can choose. And the more you choose that story, and the more you try to keep blaming that story, the things you tell yourself, the way you dress, the way you talk, the things you do, the people you decide to meet. I know for a fact that if I were living in London, or Milan, or in Singapore, I would be much richer, but way more miserable. I hate Milan, not because of the city, but because the people in Milan are constantly putting, not them, but me seeing them, are constantly telling them, you're not enough, you should have stayed in McKinsey, you should have done things differently, you should work more. Milanese or people living in Milan have nothing to do with that. It's my way of interpreting. Now, yes, I've tried to detach myself from that, but the reality is that there are some cities which are harmful for me. So I'd rather spend a week in Fuerteventura than and lose money than spend a few days in Milan. I know, just like going to a to a college reunion, right? There's all this pressure to perform, and what do you do? And now I'm okay. I laugh about things, but for a long time I used to compare myself a lot. And if I hadn't done psychoanalysis and psychotherapy, if I had not spent time, hours, days understanding how do I react to these things, then I would be adrift, right?
Yeah.
Going
Like
from
ping
one
pong
problem
ball.
to another problem. It's like a ping pong ball, and then I would meet somebody and they would say, should go back to consulting. At some point, you should choose what's good for you. Even if when I left Singapore, at some point my parents after a few months said, okay, Nick, what's next?
Yeah.
We love to have you in Bali. We love to have you around. But what are you doing here? You should go back to London or Milan. I mean,
Well, yeah.
and I said, no. I said, I'm not going. And then I said, okay, what about all the things that there's nothing here? I mean, you spent, it was not just, it was never a matter of money, but to say, you spent so many years of your life and so much energy to that path. Are you going to throw it away? And my answer was that, yes, I'll find a way here. And that was one of the toughest moments when even my dearest people, the people that were closest to me, the people that loved me the most, did not have an answer for me. And I could see that the only answer they knew was the wrong one, and it was not their fault and I had to trace my own future. And still now I'm figuring it out, because now that I founded a very successful, good consulting boutique.
Yeah.
Now I could see that it has, the lifestyle can be taxed. And now I'm saying, wow, I really need to do something else. I don't want to keep traveling that much for work. I don't know where I'm going, but this doesn't mean that I need to, just because something is there, I need to catch it. It means that I need to be comfortable with ambiguity, that together with Mario, Laura, and whoever is in, we need to create something new, which works for us.
Yeah. Yeah. When you were talking, it came on my mind a quote from Alex Hormozy that, of course, everyone should know. It's a very, very big guy in marketing, acquisition, and all of the world is exploded. And he always says that he came from zero, from sleeping in his gym, to like selling gyms, selling programs to scale the gym business and all the stuff. And he always say that in that moment when he was sleeping in his gym before selling it, he always thought to look at the next move as he was like in a movie. So you before you mentioned double o zero, 007. What 007 would do if it was me in the next steps. And I think it's true in a sort of way. Of course, manage a bit some expectations, but I think it's true. People tend to get stopped by fear and by not dreaming, not having that spark.
I love everything about this quote. It's just at some point you need to be intellectually honest with yourself and ask yourself, is this movie I'm plotting for myself, is this story I'm living the right
Yeah.
one for me? How
Yeah.
does it make me feel? Because at some point, the economics PhD or the big consultant was a great movie. I had all planted in my mind, but I was
Yeah.
hating it every single day. So at some point, you shouldn't be afraid of, zapping away from the TV series you're watching about yourself and find another one. Or just switch off the TV and said, I need some time to think. It's okay also not to have a story.
Yeah. Agree with you. So Nick, one question: if you could have a conversation with your future self 10 years from now, what would you ask?
My future self, I would say, you're just surfing. Are you finding some time for yourself? Are you giving yourself an time to? Are you telling yourself you're enough? Are you? I would say you're not taking yourself seriously, are you? Right. So all these things.
Nice, very nice.
Nice quest.
Thank you for being here. Thank you
Of course.
for whatever
all the things you said. And also I'd like to personally thank you for the focus you put on the mental health and spiritual health, mind, body, and soul. It's the motto of these years. So really thank you. Coming from you, it really means a lot. So thanks.
Grazie, Ali. Congrats. Keep fighting the good fight.
Thank you.